introduce myself and my co-speaker. I'm Nicholas, so I'm a senior malware researcher, and I'm also a trainer from Trend Micro. So I think some of the people here I've trained before in Trend Micro, Zomer, and I think there's, I forgot. No, that's Curves, other people from Trend. Yeah, from Ranger, who's already working with Raspberry, right? So also my co-speaker will be Michelle. She is a new engineer, a threat response engineer, who is now currently working with MAC malware analysis. Okay. So to start, I would like to ask which one of you or who amongst you would use MAC on a day-to-day basis? Just raise it up. Okay? So I think just a few, right? I'll be honest, even me, I'm not a native user of Mac. I mean, most of my career, I've been analyzing malwares with Windows. So somehow I'm familiar with the environment, the architecture of Windows, but I'm not familiar with Mac. So, but I think a few years ago, one of our engineers, our escalation engineers, he's the one who's familiar with Mac. So, but unfortunately, he resigned, which means that someone needs to take over. And I think I'm not sure if it was fortunate, but I was assigned to somehow start from scratch. Okay, and of course, you need to develop your environment, the tools, and of course, know how to do malware analysis in Mac. Okay. So the problem years ago is that you don't have a lot of documentation when it comes to Mac. Okay, especially with Mac malware analysis. But I think last year, in RSA conference, they presented a very good presentation wherein tackles about Mac malware analysis, especially with the persistence, okay, or the auto start methods that how can malware run in the Mac OS environment. Okay, so in this presentation is I hope this would help everyone to be aware about Mac OS, and for those who is trying or who is doing malware research or malware analysis, would help you to somehow make that shift from from Windows, which we are very used to do to Mac OS. Okay, but first let me give some introduction about Mac OS. Okay. Mac OS comes from the Unix family. Okay, so it's basically a hybrid or a mixed breed of NetStep and NetStep OS and FreeBSD. So NetStep is the one that was developed by, again, Steve Jobs after he resigned from Apple. Okay, and the first release of Mac OS the first official release started around 2001, okay, which still supports PowerPC, okay, and then at around version 10.4 or the Tiger version of Mac OS, they supported the Intel base, okay. But 2 years after, when we have 10.6, the Snow Leopard, then they dropped all of the support for PowerPC and just move with Intel. Okay, but you'll notice that they would have a problem of making sure that all of their binary files will be running properly using a PowerPC and an Intel base. Okay, so later on we'll try to discuss on how they made it possible to assure that you have a binary file that would run on both architectures. And throughout the years, and based from our based from the samples we have got before, we have noticed that Apple is consistently modifying some of the structures and some of the compositions within macOS, especially with its files. For example, with its installer package, the PKG file. Maybe 3 years, 5 years ago, the contents or the structure is different compared now. And even for their binary file, which is the MACHO file, it's still somehow, again, evolves, and somehow the structure was modified from time to time. So, and of course, as we all know, recently Apple has released macOS Share. Okay. Now, let's try to get to know more about Mac. Okay. So, and why do we need to somehow do malware analysis or learn malware analysis when it comes to Mac OS environment? This is the data from 2012 to 2016, but of course this is just with respect to Mac OS and Windows, excluding other operating system. And if you'll notice that definitely, although Windows still dominates the full the desktop, okay, but you see a decline, okay, comparing to a constant increase with Mac OS X, okay. So it just means that there are more users that's using Mac, and of course we need to protect them. And if somehow you don't want to be left behind, okay. So some people or some myths about Mac is that they don't get viruses or malwares, but that's not true, okay. And there's a consistent number of our influx of samples out there that would somehow have malwares related to Mac. And they say that Mac are safer with Windows. Personally, I don't, of course, I don't agree with it, because I think there's no operating system out there that is somehow safe to attacks and vulnerabilities or security threats. And from a security expert, Morgan, is say that there's more high-risk vulnerabilities in Mac compared to Windows put together. Okay? And lastly, they said that Mac doesn't crash, but Mac application crashes more often than Windows 7 applications, according to Network World. And with my experience, I mean, some of my applications here, even when I'm trying to use Mac, there are some applications that would crash from time to time. Okay, so it means that there are some security risks. Okay, so Apple knows this. Okay, Apple knows this, and they know that it is important to implement some safety features or security features with Mac OS. Okay, and they added a lot throughout the years, but let's focus on 4. First is the XProtect. XProtect is basically hash-based detection system. It's basically a built-in AV for Mac. But of course, if a certain malware would modify the certain binary with 1 byte, then you'll have a different hash for it. Of course, you also have a gatekeeper. The gatekeeper would enable you to block, okay, apps, okay, from unidentified developers, okay. Also, a Mac or OS X would also have a sandboxing, wherein it isolates all of the apps, okay, from critical systems or even from your data, okay. And lastly, they also implement code signing that you cannot load, okay, unsigned drivers. Okay, so kex or kernel extensions are basically drivers used in Mac OS. Okay, but the problem here is all of this could be turned off or bypassed. Okay, so it means that you could still be vulnerable in other things, okay? So, after that, let's try to move on how would Mac OS boot up. I mean, as you all know, the boot up process would somehow give us an idea where our malware could somehow also boot up. Okay, so at what point the malware could provide persistence. Okay, so first, as we all know, when you turn on the Mac, of course, you'll have the usual thing that you have. The boot ROM firmware would be activated or loaded. Of course, the normal post, the power on self-test. Then it will somehow initialize the bootloader, which is the boot.efi, and loads the kernel environment and other drivers out there, or kernel drivers, or kernel extensions. Kernel will also initialize the MAC and the BSD data structures, and including I/O or input-output kit. And of course, it will launch what you call a process, the launch D. The launch D would enable you somehow to spawn other important processes, or what they call daemons or agents. Okay, and after that, it will load the login window. Sorry. So if you notice, I'm used to Windows WinLogon, right? So the login window is similar to WinLogon, okay, to Windows, okay. So that the login window is the one who's responsible to basically provide the login screen, and of course you will be able to log on, okay. So that's the boot up process. So that now let's try to somehow tackle in which part of the boot up process a malware could take advantage of a persistence or an auto start method. Okay?
Sir?
Yes.
ROOTCON tradition. Yung formality, sir, no? Dito sa Manila. Pagkuha ng lagi na pang-artista. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
It's been a while. Okay, so now let's talk about persistence, okay, or auto start mechanisms that malwares could take advantage on Mac OS. Let's talk first about the pre-login persistence in Mac. So I mentioned about the boot.efi, okay. The EFI in Mac is a PE file, or a portable executable file. So it's the only, as far as I know, it's the only PE file that could run within, okay, before you basically run the whole Mac OS, okay. And that would somehow, of course, if you have a PE file, and for those who are familiar with file infectors or viruses within Windows, then definitely you'll know how to infect a portable executable file, okay? And definitely there's a possibility that this boot.efi could be infected, okay? Or patched by another malware or so, or another file. Then, of course, you have the XNU. XNU stands for X is not Unix, okay? XNU is the kernel of Mac OS X, and as you all know, the kernel of Mac OS is an open source, and basically you could build or customize your own kernel and basically load your own kernel. Okay, so there is a possibility that you'll also try to patch this and have a malicious code on the kernel. Okay, and of course, lastly, you have the kernel cache. What does the kernel cache do? So a kernel cache is a list of all of the drivers or the kernel extensions, okay, that would be loaded, okay, once you boot up Mac OS X. So a malware could somehow modify this list and place a malicious kernel extensions, and of course when you boot up, there's a possibility that it will be loaded also. Okay? Next, the daemon and agents. Okay? Daemon and agents are basically services. Okay? They are, if you compare it with Windows, they are the services within Mac OS. Okay? And services and agents are basically launched by launch team. Okay? And you have the difference between daemon and agents is that daemons are basically processes that are not interactive and basically boots up prior to Windows login. Okay? But agents are processes, okay, which could be interactive, okay, wherein users could interact with it and are loaded, okay, after the user login. Okay? So daemons and agents, okay, could be still used, okay, as a persistent, okay. But unlike Windows, Windows would have a registry, right? Registries that would somehow define specific settings or configurations for the whole machine or for a specific user, right? So, but in Mac OS, it's a different thing. So somehow they divide things, okay, with folders, okay. So malware, when you try to, a malware could leverage on this, wherein when they create a plist or a property list file, okay, and place this in one of these folders, okay. And of course, it depends on the folder that you will place on. So it will also depend on how it will be boot up. It could be boot up as a root, or it could be a boot up for a current user. Okay. So from that, okay, you could. I mean, unlike Windows, there are a lot of tools you could use. If you want to monitor or you want to check for your services, you have a built-in tools, services like MSC. You have other things that like auto runs. Okay, but in Mac there are just a few ones. Okay, you could use a command line base, which is launch.ttl, so it's built in. But of course, if you're not used to command line, then you could have a launch control, that app. Okay, I could recommend this. Okay, it's similar to services.msc that you could basically configure the daemon and agents. You could also have the link on X, okay, I think there's a version 4, okay. And lastly, there's a small but very effective and simple command line tool compared to launch.ttl, which is called Launchy, okay. Another type of persistence that a malware could leverage is the login items. Login items are persistence pertaining to a specific user. So user or malwares could somehow add itself to the login items that PLIST and could help you or help the malware load up when you reboot the machine. Another feature in Mac is that when you try to reboot the machine or shut down the machine, you have the option if you want all of the current running application to boot up once you reboot the system. So there's a specific plist or property list file that lists all of the current applications that are running, and malwares could also add itself on this plist. Next, could be another one is the startup items. Another persistence that you could execute scripts after you reboot. Okay, and you have very specific folders for it. And lastly is the application base. Okay, this persistence can be somehow very specific to a certain application, maybe Safari, wherein you could load an extension, okay, or a plugin. So a malware could somehow act as a plugin or an extension. So those are basically some of the persistent methods within Mac, okay? But of course, we need to somehow know more about what files could run within Mac OS. Okay, so we need to somehow discuss about its file system. Okay, basically Mac OS currently runs using the HFS Plus. Okay, which could of course run most of your scripts like Perl, Python, or Bash. It could also run some of the container files like DMG. DMG is like an ISO, but DMG is somehow could be mounted as a drive. Okay, and you have the PKG file. The PKG file is like an MSI, okay, file in Windows, wherein it is the installer package with Mac. And next, what you have the universal binaries or the FAT binaries. Okay, the FAT binaries are the ones who made it possible that you have or you could support multiple architectures. Okay, and of course you have those binaries. Okay, which is the MACHO. Okay, the MACHO file format is the one that's used for the executable binaries in Mac. And if you're looking for what are those DLLs and what are the sys files in Mac, they are basically the dlite and the somehow the .kex or the kernel extension. Okay, but next year, they would. I think it was announced this year that Mac would implementing a new file system, which is the APFS, okay, which should be supported on all platforms of Apple devices and Apple operating system. It means that should be supported on all Apple products, okay. So next thing that we need to focus on or what files we need to look for in Mac OS is the property list, okay, which are the PLIST file, okay. PLIST file contains all of those configuration settings within the system or within a application, okay, and they are in an XML format, okay. So if you compare it with Windows, it's basically a decentralized registry, okay, wherein the settings, okay, are somehow, or the configuration are basically placed together with your application. That's one reason why it's easy to uninstall programs or applications within Mac. You just drag and drop the application and that's it. Okay, you basically uninstall it because most of the configurations, okay, are somehow incorporated within the application itself. Okay, so it has a decentralized registry compared to Windows that you need to have an uninstaller to remove all of those the registries or all of the items in the registries. Okay. Next is there's also an equivalent binary plist or a compiled plist. Okay. Aside from an XML format, okay, you have a compiled one, okay, and it's very easy to pinpoint because there's a signature of BPD00 or BPD01, okay, and there's a command line for you to convert the plist to a binary to an XML format or XML format to a binary plist, okay, and of course there are a lot of tools out there, but I would recommend this three, which is Perf Editor, the Perf Edit, the PLIST Edit Pro, which also comes with a command line, which is good, okay? And you don't have to convert a binary plist to XML just to open it. You could use the PLIST Edit Pro and open the binary format of the plist. And of course, you have the perfsetter.app, okay? So these are very good tools that you could use. Next are also some of another file that malwares could also use is the DB files. Okay, the DB files is another way for you to store information. Basically, it's a SQLite database format, and it's easy to recognize it. Wherein there's a signature, okay, of SQLite. Okay, and of course, there's a freeware out there. From SQLite browser.org, and it's a very good tool to help you parse everything on the DB files. Okay, now let's move to the university binaries or the fat binaries. So basically, fat binaries is the strategy of Apple to somehow make sure that a binary file would run on a PowerPC or an Intel base. Okay, so fat binaries is just a wrapper. So it contains multiple MACHO files. Okay, that could support multiple architectures for PowerPC, for a 32-bit or 64-bit, and of course for Intel. Okay, and it's easy to identify a fat binary, wherein the headers could be a Cafe Babe. Okay, there's a signature Cafe Babe, but please take note and be cautious that Cafe Babe is also the signature used by Java. Okay, so the headers of the fat binaries would give you information about what type of CPU or what type of processor that it will use, if it's PowerPC or Intel based, or if it's for 32-bit or 64-bit. Okay, it could also identify the location of the MACHO file itself, or where is it located. Okay, so that it points to the MACHO specifically used, okay, that or can be used for a specific architecture. Now, lastly is you have, once you get to the MACHO file itself, okay, the MACHO file is the one that you could, the one that you need to somehow analyze, okay? And it's easy to identify it because there's a signature feed face, okay? Feed face for PowerPC, okay? And for a 64-bit, it's a feed FACF, okay? But for Intel base, since Intel implements Little Engine, so you need to read it from right to left. Okay, so it will be just a reverse of the feed face. Okay, and within the MACHO file header, there are some important fields. Okay, which is the file type. The file type would somehow help you identify if the MACHO file is an executable, dynamic link library or a driver. Okay, and of course, it is also important that you have the commands, okay? Unlike in PE, okay, in PE file, the MACHO file uses load commands. And load commands are basically summarize you or give you details on, for example, how would you load, or how the loader would load the MACHO file into memory, okay? Or something like, where does the first code, okay, or the first code that will be executed, okay? As much as I would like to discuss about MACHO file or the headers itself, okay, but you could always discuss with me offline if you want to. We have somehow summarized the whole MACHO headers. If you are interested, we could somehow you could get this one from me. So we have summarized, okay, all of the headers, okay. Okay, we have summarized all of the headers of the MACHO file to give you more details about each field, okay, especially for those who are really interested about the MACHO file itself, okay. So with that, okay, I want to give the floor to my co-speaker, Michelle, and she'll be talking about the recent trends of Mac malwares, and of course, what are the available tools that you could use for Mac malware analysis.
So good morning, everyone. So I will be talking about the Mac malware trends. So for the longest time, Windows has experienced a number of families, but not a lot in Mac. So we think that the reason for this is that there is not much profit in targeting Mac before. But then right now, as you can see, the market share for Mac has increased. So I think that malware actors are gaining interest in targeting Mac applications. So in the recent years, like since 2014 up to now, we have experienced or we have heard a lot about threats found in Mac. So there was a lot of noise regarding vulnerabilities and threats in the Mac OS. So I will be discussing some of these threats that we have experienced in the recent years. So first of all, I will be talking about the first Mac malware. So there are different categories of malware. So we have the virus, the worm, the backdoor, and the fake AVs. So this is quite similar to the Windows, but a Mac version. So for the first virus in Mac, seen in the wild is the OSXBA, or also known as the Oompa Loompa. So as you can see, it was first seen in the wild in 2006, fairly recently compared to the viruses in Windows. So actually, Oompa Loompa is, it's not only a virus, you can also call it a Trojan because it disguises itself upon arrival to the system. We can also call it a worm because it has the ability to actually spread itself by sending a copy of itself to the body disk of the user in their iChat. And it's a virus as it infects Cocoa applications. So what it does is it installs an install manager in the user's directory, and then it uses this to search for the 4 most recent applications used by the user, and then if it's a Cocoa application, they infect it. So for the first worm, the RENEPO, also known as opener, so it was first seen in the wild in 1998. So it self-propagates by gaining access to the root of the system. So after gaining access to the root of the system, it then creates a new user, admin level, and then this one is used to gain access to subsequent systems. So it propagates via network and drives. It also turns off some security features, major security features, such as system accounting and logging, OSX firewall, and also system auto updates. Okay, so for the first backdoor, it was
Excuse me, madam, before you continue, we wanted to formally welcome you to ROOTCON. I know you're a lady, so I'm going to hand you a glass of water. And we lessened it by 50%. Kung wala ka na. Ang brave soul, walang water daw. No.
It feels better. Okay, so for the first fake AV, I'm sorry, we also need to discuss the first backdoor. Okay, so the first backdoor is the Lancet, also known as OSX Malice. So it's actually a hacker tool used to install. So it's actually a hacker tool used to install the backdoor. So since it needs physical access to the system, it was dismissed as a serious threat by that industry. So fake AV. This is quite common in Mac. So the first one is the Mac Defender. So it actually took on a legitimate looking name to fool Mac users. So the attack is quite similar to the ones found in Windows. So how they did this was they used poisoned popular searches on browsers. So once you use these popular searches, you will be redirected to another website which contains the malicious AV. And once you have the AV on your system, it will then, AV means antivirus, I'm sorry. So it will then show the user a fake file scan saying that your system has been infected and some critical functions have been compromised. So, and then it pretends to be an antivirus in your system. Okay, so for the more recent malwares, so as you can see, the years here are very, very, very recent. So 3 out of the 4 malwares here are just from 2014 to 2016. So that's just 2 years ago. So for more recent virus, this is the KERANGER. So it's not very famous as it is only a proof of concept virus. So it wasn't released in the wild. This is actually an upgraded version by JPanic because they also have one for Windows, but they upgraded it to be a multi-platform virus. So even if your infector is an exe file, it can infect a MACHO file. So yeah. Next is the worm, the Thunderstrike. This is one of the more popular ones, I believe, because the implications it has is very serious. It's a very, very serious threat. However, it's only a proof of concept. So it was made by security researchers. So it attacks the firmware of the system. So once it can spread via the option ROM of peripheral devices. So once your peripheral device or infected peripheral device is connected to your Mac, it will stick itself on the firmware of your Mac, and it will be very hard to see if you are compromised, if your system is compromised. Also, it's a very big problem, as if you try to reinstall your OS, it will still stay in your firmware. If you want to update your firmware, you would need your existing firmware to update your firmware. So it will be very hard to try to remove this worm in your system. For backdoor, we have the Eleanor. So it was distributed as ECDOC converter. So what it does is it connects your system to a Tor network and generates an onion domain, which will be used to access the user's system using only the browser. So it can also access currently running applications, applications on your systems, and also files on your systems. For the fake AV, we have the MacKeeper. So, well, MacKeeper is kind of controversial still because there are a number of different opinions regarding this. So, but if you check the discussions in the official Apple site, they think this is actually a threat. So we are considering it as a fake antivirus. So because it claims to clean and optimize your system, but it does not do the work. It just asks you to pay for more. So, yeah. Okay, so when ransomware became rampant in Windows, we were thinking that it will only be a matter of time before they start targeting Mac. Because ransomware is very, very messy right now in Windows. So we think that, when will the time come when ransomware starts attacking Mac systems? So true enough, in 2016, in March 2016, we had first seen the Mac ransomware, which is the KERANGER. So it was seen in the wild by Palo Alto, first seen by Palo Alto. So transmission.bmg is a legitimate Bitcoin application. So, BitTorrent application. So in March 4, when you go to their website then and download their application, you would be given this transmission version 2.9 BMG installer. So actually, this is a compromised installer, wherein they have an additional file, which is the general.rtf. So, once you install BMG in your Mac, you will have an app. So this .app is kind of like a bundle now. It's a folder, so you can check in the contents inside. So there is a folder, the folder in there, the MACHO. This is the main executable file of your system. And then this MACHO calls on this general.rtf. So it looks like general.rtf, but it's actually a MACO file also. So it's a UPEX-packed. So the main MACO also unpacks this. And then this general RTF is the one that does the malicious work. So it drops the kernel PID, kernel time, kernel complete, and it's also the one responsible for encrypting the user's files and who it is for ransom. So it's really just like the ransomware you find in Windows. So there. Okay, so here are some tools that you can use for static analysis. So hex dumpers. You can use the terminal. You can just use this command line. But there are also some GUI-based applications that are quite good. You can use oxe.app or hexpl. For file string extraction, you can use grep and use regex pattern, or you can use this command in your terminal. So, but you can also use some GUI-based, which is the texttractor.app. Here are some MACO file analysis tools, which can display and parse the whole MACO file. So you can use macoview.app, or you can use your terminal using OTool, or you can upload it in a website, the macovs.anrc-services.com. So I just upload your MACO file in there, and then they will show you static analysis of your file. Here are some tools for dynamic analysis. So for process monitoring, there are some GUI-based, which is the activity-monitor.app and task-explorer.app. But we can also use the terminal and Mac. So we just use grep process name or ps-ef grep. Just grep the process name. Okay, for persistence monitoring, so this would include checking out the agents and DAEMONs in your system. So you can use launch CTL list for terminal, in your terminal, just type in that. Or you can use a GUI-based one. This is knock knock, so it's fairly new. So that's how it looks like. So you can check the kernel extensions, launch items, some library inserts, or the login items. For file system monitoring, you can also use the terminal by typing in fs_usage or lsoff. Or you can use a GUI-based one, which is the f7u.app, and the active fsspy.app. For network monitoring, of course, you can use Wireshark. For HTTP parser, you can use fetcher.app, or you can use portsmonitor.app, or just type in your terminal netstat-a. So for other tools, we have text and source code editors, which are textwrangler.app and Tinta.app. For API documentation browser, it's kind of like your MSDN, but compiled. It compiled everything, so it includes API used by other programming languages. So you can use dash.app. So to wrap everything up.
Okay, so just to wrap it up before we end the presentation, okay. As I mentioned on my earlier, that this is just somehow a guide, okay, for you to somehow start start or make that shift to macOS malware analysis, okay? So why do we need to somehow learn, okay, and start Mac malware analysis, okay? So first is, as you all know, Apple is trying to streamline all of this, their devices to their new file system next year. And I think yesterday, one presenter presented Swift, okay? Swift is a programming language that could be used again, that could be used across all of Apple products from Mac OS to iOS. So they are really trying to somehow make sure that all operating systems are streamlined. Okay, so when you have this kind of scenario, it's also going to give malware authors the leverage to somehow streamline their attacks on each platform. Okay, so if you have that, so For us, okay, for us who are really somehow Windows users, it's about time to catch up and learn about Mac and iOS environment and learn how to analyze malwares within Apple products and Apple environments. Okay, thank you.